That was the worst day of my life. Never had that feeling before, and I never want to feel like that again. Michael's passing have caused problems in a lot of ways.
Don't treat me like a criminal.
Yes, it does make me angry because he looked guilty.
Michael told me that we loved each other, but if you ever tell anyone what we're doing, both of our lives and our careers will be over.
For decades, the world has speculated about the pressures and struggles that shaped Michael Jackson. But now, for the first time, his mother, Katherine Jackson, is breaking her silence. At 94 years old, she is revealing the untold truths behind her son's extraordinary life, the triumphs, the sacrifices, and the hidden battles he faced beyond the spotlight. Michael wasn't just a musical icon. He was a man shaped by relentless ambition, overwhelming expectations, and a desire for something he never truly had: normalcy. From his childhood in Gary, Indiana, to the global stage, Michael's journey was filled with both dazzling highs and heartbreaking lows. But what was really happening behind closed doors? What did fame cost him? And what does his mother say now that confirms what many long suspected? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the king of pop's most private struggles. Michael Jackson's journey to superstardom began in the most unexpected place, a modest two-bedroom home in Gary, Indiana. Born on August 29, 1958, Michael was the seventh of 9 children in the Jackson family. Their house was small, their means were limited, but their dreams were boundless. Life in Gary was tough. The city was built on steel, and hard work was the only way forward. His father, Joe Jackson, worked long hours as a steel mill employee, while his mother, Katherine, dedicated herself to raising their children, instilling in them a deep sense of faith and discipline. Even in those early years, music was at the heart of the Jackson household. Katherine had a passion for music. She played the piano and clarinet, dreaming of a singing career that never came to be. Though she never pursued it professionally, her love for melodies and harmonies found a home in her children. She nurtured their talents, encouraging them to sing and play instruments, often filling their small home with music despite their struggles. But while Katherine was gentle and supportive, Joe was a different kind of influence. He saw potential in his children and believed music could be their way out of poverty. He became their manager, pushing them beyond their limits, demanding perfection, and accepting nothing less. Michael, even as a small child, was under intense pressure. Rehearsals weren't just practice, they were discipline. Any mistake was met with strict correction. While his father's methods were harsh, they also built the foundation for his relentless work ethic and drive for excellence. By the time Michael was 6 years old, his talent was undeniable. He had a voice that carried both innocence and emotion, a rare combination that drew people in. His older brothers had already started performing as a group called the Jackson Brothers, but when Michael joined, everything changed. His charisma, raw vocal ability, and natural stage presence transformed the group. Soon after, they became the Jackson 5, and the journey to stardom truly began. They started performing in local talent shows, school events, and even small clubs around Gary. Crowds were mesmerized by Michael's ability to command the stage at such a young age. His voice had depth, power, and an emotional resonance that made audiences take notice. Word spread quickly about the young boy with an electrifying presence, and it wasn't long before the Jackson 5 began winning every competition they entered. But local fame wasn't enough. Joe Jackson had bigger plans. He was determined to get his sons in front of the right people. The family packed into their car and traveled to auditions, knocking on doors, making phone calls, and doing whatever it took to get noticed. Their big break came when they auditioned for Mowtown Records, one of the most influential music labels of the era. The audition was nerve-wracking, but Michael, as always, delivered a performance that left executives in awe. Berry Gordy, the founder of Mowtown, immediately recognized Michael's potential. In 1968, the Jackson 5 officially signed with the label, and their lives would never be the same again. With Mowtown's guidance, they refined their act, polished their performances, and prepared to take on the world. In 1969, they released their first major single, I Want You Back. It was an instant hit, reaching #1 on the Billboard charts and propelling the young group into national stardom. The Jackson 5 wasn't just another singing group. They had something special, something different. Their sound was fresh, their energy infectious, and their lead singer, a young Michael Jackson, had a voice that made people stop and listen. With follow-up hits like ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, the group became a phenomenon. They weren't just climbing the charts, they were breaking records and making history. But behind the success, Michael was facing an internal struggle. While other kids were playing outside, making friends, and experiencing a normal childhood, Michael was in recording studios, on stage, or rehearsing under his father's watchful eye. The pressure to be perfect was relentless. Every note had to be right, every step had to be precise, and there was no room for mistakes. Though the applause and fame were thrilling, Michael often felt like he was missing out on something essential, something ordinary, something real. As the Jackson 5's popularity grew, so did the demands. Endless rehearsals, constant touring, television appearances. There was no time to be a child. Michael loved performing, but he also longed for the childhood experiences he never got to have. Years later, he would speak openly about the loneliness he felt growing up in the spotlight. While fans saw a young boy with a bright smile and incredible talent, behind the scenes, Michael was carrying a burden far heavier than anyone realized. But his journey was only beginning. The Jackson 5 had opened the door to success, but Michael's ambitions stretched far beyond the group. He had dreams that went beyond Mowtown, beyond family, beyond anything that had been done before. And as he grew, so did his hunger to create something new, something bigger, something that would make him unforgettable. What would it take for Michael to break free from the past and become the star he was destined to be? The answer would come in the years ahead, as he began his transformation from child prodigy to global icon. When the Jackson 5 signed with Mowtown Records in 1968, it was the moment that changed everything. For years, they had worked tirelessly, performing in local clubs and talent shows, but now they were stepping onto the biggest stage in music. Mowtown was home to legendary artists like Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, and Diana Ross. And now, a group of young brothers from Gary, Indiana, was about to make history. Mowtown wasted no time in preparing the group for stardom. Under the guidance of Berry Gordy, they refined their act, polished their vocals, and perfected their choreography. The goal was to make them not just a great group, but a cultural phenomenon. And it worked. In 1969, the Jackson 5 released their first single, I Want You Back, and the world took notice. The song was energetic, fresh, and filled with youthful excitement. Within weeks, it shot to the top of the Billboard charts, making them the first group to have their debut single reach #1. It was the beginning of something massive. The success didn't stop there. With their next songs, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There, they cemented their place in music history. ABC was playful and infectious, rivaling even the Beatles in popularity at the time. I'll Be There showed a different side of the group, with Michael's emotional, heartfelt delivery proving that he was more than just a child performer. He was an artist with depth and soul. The Jackson 5 became a sensation. They weren't just dominating the charts, they were everywhere. Their faces were on magazine covers, their voices filled radio waves, and their electrifying performances on shows like The Ed Sullivan Show and American Bandstand made them household names. Fans screamed at every appearance, and suddenly, 5 boys from a small industrial town were the biggest stars in the world. But while the success seemed like a dream come true, behind the bright lights and the screaming fans, the reality was far more complicated, especially for Michael. Fame came with a cost. The Jackson 5's schedule was relentless. If they weren't recording, they were rehearsing. If they weren't rehearsing, they were performing. Tours stretched for months, with barely a moment to rest. Every move was choreographed, every performance had to be flawless, and there was little time for anything outside of music. For Michael, the pressure was even greater. As the lead singer, he carried the weight of the group's success on his small shoulders. He was only a child, yet he was expected to perform at an elite level every single night. The audience saw a confident, charismatic boy commanding the stage. But behind the scenes, he was exhausted. Joe Jackson made sure his sons stayed on top of their game. Rehearsals were intense, and mistakes weren't tolerated. If a note was off, if a dance move wasn't sharp enough, they did it again and again until it was perfect. Joe believed discipline was the key to success, but for Michael, it often felt like he was never allowed to simply be a child. While other kids were playing in the park or going to school dances, Michael was inside a studio or on a plane to another city. His world was controlled. Every detail of his life was managed by others, and the innocence of childhood quickly faded. At first, the excitement of fame made it easier to handle. The applause, the love from fans, the thrill of performing. It was magical. But as time went on, the reality of his isolation became more clear. While his brothers had each other, Michael felt different. He was the center of attention, the undeniable star of the group, and that meant he was often set apart. As he grew older, he struggled to connect with kids his own age. He missed out on simple childhood experiences, things like going to birthday parties, making friends at school, and just being carefree. Instead, his world was one of rehearsals, interviews, and expectations. Years later, Michael would reflect on this time in his life, saying he longed for the childhood he never had. He would watch other children playing and feel like an outsider, unable to relate. The isolation only deepened as he matured, and while the world adored him, he often felt deeply alone. The Jackson 5's success was groundbreaking. They broke racial barriers, becoming one of the first black groups to achieve mainstream success across all audiences. Their music brought people together, their performances were electrifying, and they paved the way for future generations of artists. But for Michael, the journey was just beginning. The Jackson 5 had given him fame, but it had also given him a hunger, an ambition to do more, to be more, to break free from the past and redefine himself as an artist. What came next would change music history forever. The young boy from Gary, Indiana, who once stood in the background of his older brothers, was about to step into his own spotlight, and the world had no idea just how big he was about to become. As the 1970s progressed, Michael Jackson knew he was meant for something bigger. The Jackson 5 had given him success, fame, and a place in history. But he was no longer just a boy in a family group. He was an artist with his own vision, his own sound, and a desire to break free from the shadows of his brothers. The world had only seen a glimpse of what he was capable of, and now he was ready to step into his own. Michael's solo journey began while he was still with the Jackson 5. At just 13 years old, he released his first solo album, Got to Be There, in 1971. The title track, along with Rockin' Robin and I Wanna Be Where You Are, proved that Michael could carry an entire album on his own. His voice, filled with emotion and power, was unlike anything heard from a young artist before. His second album, Ben, followed in 1972, with its title track becoming his first solo #1 hit. The song, a heartfelt ballad about an unlikely friendship, showed Michael's ability to connect deeply with his music. But despite his early solo success, he was still part of the Jackson 5, and as the years went on, he felt increasingly restricted. The group had outgrown its Mowtown roots, and Michael was eager to experiment with new sounds. In 1975, they left Mowtown and signed with Epic Records, rebranding as the Jacksons. This move gave them more creative control, but Michael's ambitions stretched far beyond the group. He wanted to evolve, to push boundaries, and to create something that had never been done before. That moment came in 1979 with the release of Off the Wall. This was the album that changed everything. It was Michael's first real statement as a solo artist, his way of saying, "This is who I am." To bring his vision to life, he teamed up with legendary producer Quincy Jones. Together, they created an album that blended pop, R&B, funk, and disco in a way that was fresh, exciting, and completely original. The lead single, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, was an instant sensation. The infectious groove, the hypnotic rhythm, and Michael's high-energy vocals made it impossible to ignore. It became his first Grammy-winning song and a defining moment in his career. Rock With You followed, a smooth and sultry track that showcased his effortless charm and vocal mastery. The album was unlike anything else at the time. It was vibrant, sophisticated, and ahead of its era. Off the Wall sold over 20 million copies worldwide, proving that Michael wasn't just a former child star, he was a musical force on his own. But Michael wasn't satisfied. He wasn't content with just having a hit album. He wanted to create something bigger, something legendary, something that would make him unstoppable. Then came Thriller. Released in 1982, Thriller wasn't just an album, it was a revolution. From the very first track, it was clear that Michael had created something groundbreaking. With Quincy Jones once again at the helm, the album pushed every boundary, blending pop, rock, R&B, and funk with an unmatched level of artistry. The production was immaculate, the songwriting was next level, and Michael's performances were electrifying. Billie Jean was one of the album's defining moments. The haunting bass line, the storytelling, and Michael's mesmerizing vocal delivery made it an instant classic. But it wasn't just the song that made history. It was the performance. When Michael stepped onto the stage at Mowtown 25 and moonwalked for the first time, the world froze. That single move, smooth and effortless, cemented his status as a pop icon. Beat It brought rock into the mix, featuring a blistering guitar solo from Eddie Van Halen. It was raw, aggressive, and showed that Michael wasn't afraid to blend genres and challenge expectations. The song's music video was equally iconic. Michael, dressed in a red leather jacket, standing between rival gangs, using dance as a form of unity. It wasn't just a video, it was a cinematic event. And then, of course, there was Thriller. The title track wasn't just a song, it was a cultural moment. The music video, directed by John Landis, wasn't just a standard performance clip. It was a short horror film, complete with elaborate choreography, special effects, and a narrative that captured the imagination of millions. The eerie narration by horror legend Vincent Price added to the magic. making it one of the most unforgettable music videos of all time. Thriller shattered every record imaginable. It became the best-selling album of all time, selling over 70 million copies worldwide. It won a record-breaking 8 Grammy Awards in one night. And most importantly, it broke barriers. It was one of the first albums by a black artist to receive heavy airplay on MTV, opening doors for future generations of musicians. Michael Jackson had done it. He had taken music, dance, and visuals to an entirely new level. He wasn't just a pop star, he was the king of pop. And yet, he was only just getting started. But with all the fame and success came an entirely new set of challenges. The world adored him, but it also scrutinized his every move. As he reached unimaginable heights, Michael would also face struggles that would test him in ways no one could have predicted. His transformation was far from over, and the pressures of being the biggest star on the planet were just beginning to take their toll. With every record broken and every performance that stunned the world, Michael Jackson's legend grew. He had achieved what no artist had before, transcending music, race, and culture to become a truly global icon. But beneath the dazzling lights and roaring crowds, there was a man fighting battles the world barely understood. One of the most talked about aspects of Michael's life was his evolving appearance. As the years went by, his skin visibly lightened, sparking endless rumors and speculation. Some accused him of intentionally altering his complexion, claiming he was trying to erase his identity. The truth, however, was far different. Michael suffered from vitiligo, a chronic skin condition that causes the loss of pigmentation in patches across the body. Diagnosed in the early 1980s, the condition gradually became more noticeable, forcing him to find ways to even out his skin tone. To make matters worse, he also battled lupus, an autoimmune disease that not only made his skin more sensitive to sunlight, but also caused fatigue and pain. For years, he remained silent about his condition, refusing to let it define him. But as the media continued to speculate, the scrutiny became unbearable. When he finally addressed it in an interview with Oprah Winfrey in 1993, he made one thing clear: "I am proud to be a black man. I don't control this condition. I can't help it." Yet, despite his words, the rumors never stopped. Michael's struggles with his health didn't end there. In 1984, during the filming of a Pepsi commercial, a horrifying accident changed his life forever. A pyrotechnic malfunction caused a spark to ignite his hair, setting it ablaze. Before the flames could be put out, Michael suffered second-degree burns to his scalp. The pain was excruciating, and the emotional toll was just as severe. The injury led to a series of medical treatments, including multiple surgeries to repair the damage. To manage the intense pain, Michael was prescribed painkillers, medication that, over time, became something he relied on more and more. What started as a necessity to cope with the trauma slowly grew into a dependency, and though few knew it at the time, this was the beginning of a battle with addiction that would follow him for the rest of his life. Despite his personal struggles, Michael continued to push forward, creating music, touring the world, and redefining entertainment. But as his fame reached new heights, so did the price he had to pay. By the mid-1980s, Michael had become the most recognizable person on the planet. Wherever he went, crowds swarmed, desperate to catch a glimpse of him. The paparazzi followed his every move. Tabloids fabricated outrageous stories, and every aspect of his personal life became public property. Unlike many celebrities who enjoyed the limelight, Michael longed for privacy. He was a man who had spent his entire life in front of an audience, yet all he wanted was a sense of normalcy. He built Neverland Ranch not just as a home, but as an escape, a place where he could surround himself with joy, where he could reclaim a childhood he never had. But even in Neverland, he wasn't safe from the media's obsession. Journalists and photographers camped outside his gates, spinning stories that painted him as an eccentric recluse. His love for amusement parks, animals, and childlike wonder was misunderstood, twisted into something sinister by those who didn't take the time to see the man behind the legend. The tabloids labeled him Wacko Jacko, a name that he despised. They turned his life into a circus, turning every public appearance, every outfit, and every personal decision into a spectacle. Even something as simple as covering his face with a surgical mask, a precaution due to his lupus, became fuel for ridicule. For Michael, the world had become both his stage and his prison. No matter where he went, cameras followed. No matter what he said, his words were distorted. He was the most famous man alive, yet he had never felt more alone. As the years passed, the weight of it all became heavier. The childhood he had lost, the expectations he had to meet, the pain he had endured, all of it was taking its toll. And as the pressure continued to mount, the one thing that had always brought him joy, his music, was slowly being overshadowed by the chaos surrounding his name. But Michael wasn't done fighting. He still had more to give, more to create, and more to prove. His journey was far from over, but so were the challenges that awaited him. By the early 1990s, Michael Jackson was more than just an entertainer. He was a living legend. He had revolutionized music, broken barriers, and changed the industry forever. But with the heights of success came an equally devastating fall. The world had adored him, but in 1993, everything changed. That year, Michael faced the most serious allegations of his life. A 13-year-old boy, Jordan Chandler, and his family accused him of inappropriate behavior, sending shockwaves across the globe. The news spread like wildfire, and suddenly, the media that once celebrated him was now tearing him apart. Michael had always been known for his deep connection with children, seeing them as symbols of innocence, something he had lost in his own youth. He surrounded himself with young friends, inviting them to Neverland Ranch, a place he built to be a paradise of happiness and escape. But now, that very kindness was being weaponized against him. The tabloid frenzy was relentless. Headlines screamed accusations, television anchors speculated, and Michael found himself in the middle of a nightmare. For someone who had spent his entire life trying to spread love and joy, the weight of such accusations was unbearable. In a rare move, Michael publicly addressed the allegations, speaking with raw emotion. He vehemently denied the claims, stating he would never harm a child. His voice was shaky, his pain visible. But in the court of public opinion, the damage had already been done. In early 1994, rather than endure a long and grueling trial, Michael's legal team advised him to settle the case out of court for a reported $23 million. While the settlement did not include an admission of guilt, many saw it as suspicious. To Michael, it was about ending the torment, escaping the circus, and focusing on his music. But to the media, it was fuel for speculation that would follow him for the rest of his life. Despite the emotional toll of these events, Michael still sought love and companionship. Just months after the case was settled, the world was once again shocked. This time by his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley. Michael and Lisa Marie had known each other for years, but reconnected in the early 90s. She saw the real Michael, the vulnerable, misunderstood man behind the fame. To her, he wasn't just the king of pop. He was someone who longed for love and stability. Their marriage, announced in 1994, was met with skepticism. Many believed it was a publicity stunt meant to repair Michael's image after the allegations. But Lisa Marie insisted their love was real, though their relationship was anything but ordinary. They were two people born into unimaginable fame, trying to find normalcy in a world that refused to give it to them. Their public appearances together were often scrutinized. Their 1994 MTV Video Music Awards kiss was seen as forced, fueling speculation that their union was not genuine. Behind closed doors, however, their relationship was filled with deep conversations, late-night phone calls, and a desire to support one another. But it wasn't enough. Lisa Marie struggled with Michael's lifestyle, his inner circle, and the pressures that came with being his wife. She wanted to be his rock, but Michael was living in a world that few could ever understand. After less than 2 years of marriage, they divorced in 1996. Shortly after, Michael's focus shifted to something he had long dreamed of: fatherhood. His relationship with Debbie Rowe, a dermatology nurse he had known for years, soon took a different turn. Debbie cared deeply for Michael and, knowing how much he wanted children, offered to carry his child. Unlike his marriage to Lisa Marie, Michael's union with Debbie was not rooted in romance, but in friendship and a shared desire to bring children into the world. In 1997, Michael Joseph Jackson Jr., known as Prince, was born. The following year, their daughter, Paris Michael Katherine Jackson, arrived. For Michael, fatherhood was the most important role of his life. Though his marriage to Debbie ended in 1999, they remained close. Debbie granted Michael full custody of their children, believing he could give them a life filled with love and security. Michael's devotion to his children was unwavering. He shielded them from the media, often covering their faces in public to protect their identities. He wanted them to have the childhood he never had, one free from the pressure of fame. But even as he built a life with his children, Michael still longed for a sanctuary. That place was Neverland Ranch. Neverland was more than just a mansion. It was a world Michael had created for himself. With amusement, park rides, a zoo, and sprawling gardens, it was a reflection of the child he never got to be. He spent hours there with his children, playing games, watching movies, and simply being a dad. But the world outside Neverland didn't understand him. The same media that once celebrated him now mocked him, twisting his desire for innocence into something unnatural. Rumors and misconceptions surrounded him, and the home he built to escape the world eventually became the very thing that trapped him. Despite the controversies, despite the scrutiny, despite the heartbreak, Michael remained committed to one thing above all: his love for his children. For Michael, they were the light in his life, the reason he kept going, and his greatest joy in a world that often misunderstood him. But even as he tried to create a new chapter, his battles were far from over. The world still wasn't done watching him, and soon the controversies would return, stronger than ever. For years, the world saw Michael Jackson as larger than life, a superstar, a cultural icon, a man who seemed to have everything. But behind the music, the fame, and the spectacle was a person who often felt profoundly alone. Now, at 94 years old, Katherine Jackson is speaking out, revealing the hidden truths about her son's struggles, the pain he carried, the sacrifices he made, and the emotional battles he fought in silence. As his mother, Katherine watched Michael transform from a joyful, energetic child into a man weighed down by the demands of fame. She saw his innocence fade as he was pushed further into the spotlight, forced to become an entertainer before he had the chance to truly be a child. While the world celebrated him, she knew the reality. Michael was often lonely, misunderstood, and searching for something he could never quite find. She recalls how, even at the height of his success, Michael would call her late at night, just to hear a familiar voice, just to feel some sense of comfort. He would tell her how much he missed being normal, how exhausting it was to be Michael Jackson every day. The weight of superstardom was unbearable at times, and despite the millions who adored him, Michael often felt isolated. As much as he loved his fans, he struggled with the idea that no one truly saw him for who he was. The world saw a megastar, a dancer, a performer, but few saw the man beneath the fame, the person who still longed for the childhood he never had. Despite all of this, one thing remained constant: his love for music. It was his escape, his sanctuary, his way of expressing everything he couldn't say in words. Even when he faced endless controversies, relentless media attacks, and unimaginable personal pain, Michael never stopped creating. His artistry remained unmatched, his vision untouched. Every note, every lyric, every performance came from his soul. In his later years, his music took on a deeper meaning. He no longer just wanted to entertain. He wanted to heal, to inspire, to bring change. Songs like Man in the Mirror became more than just hits. They were messages, reflections of his desire to make the world a better place. Earth Song was his cry for the planet, a plea for humanity to wake up and protect what was being destroyed. You Are Not Alone was his way of speaking to those who felt the same loneliness he did, reminding them that no matter how lost they felt, they were never truly alone. Michael poured his heart into his music because, in many ways, it was all he had. It was his way of connecting, of feeling, of making sense of a world that had both loved and betrayed him. Katherine remembers how, even in his most difficult moments, his passion never wavered. He would sit at the piano for hours, lost in melodies, completely immersed in the one thing that always felt real to him: music. To this day, she believes that his greatest gift wasn't just his talent. It was his ability to touch lives, to bring people together, to inspire generations. And while his journey was filled with struggle, his legacy remains untouchable. No controversy, no rumor, no scandal could ever erase the impact he left on the world. His music, his message, his influence, they continue to live on. As the final notes of his most powerful songs play, the world is reminded that Michael Jackson was more than an artist. He was a dreamer, a visionary, a man who gave everything to his craft. And though he may be gone, his voice will never be silenced. His story will never be forgotten. His music will never fade. Because legends, true legends, never die. Michael Jackson's life was a story of triumph, sacrifice, and resilience. Through Katherine Jackson's words, we've gained a deeper understanding of the man behind the legend, the child who never had a childhood, the artist who pushed boundaries, and the soul who longed for love and understanding. Despite the struggles, his legacy remains unshaken. His music, his message, and his influence continue to inspire generations across the world. From the electrifying performances to the heartfelt ballads, Michael gave everything he had to his art, and in return, he became immortal. As we remember his journey, one thing is certain: his impact will never fade. Thank you for joining us in exploring the untold truths of Michael Jackson. If this deep dive gave you a new perspective, be sure to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue celebrating the King of Pop's legacy, today and always.